Okay, good morning, everyone. We want to say welcome to Facebook viewers. Let me first of all say a very special good morning to our guests who are joining us, as well as I want to introduce our panel for today, this press conference. So we have the Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Alan Shasney, and the Leader of the United Workers' Party. We also have Mr. Spider Montoot, the Public Relations Officer of the United Workers' Party. So today we're going to be dealing with some very, very pressing issues affecting our country. So the first issue we'll be dealing with is the crime situation. You know that over the weekend, from Friday over Sunday, very, very busy homicide situation in the country where we had on 3 separate occasions at least 5 people losing their lives to gun violence, which continues to grip our country. We also saw very, very unceremonially and inhumanely, if I could say, the vendors of our country continues to be under attack from the St. Lucia Labour Party administration. None other than the Minister of Castries Central himself on site as the equipment came in and to dislodge the vendors from their location on Labrie Street and Jeremy Street. We also going to deal today with the scandal of the century. This issue which continues to really embarrass all of us as we travel around St. Lucia. The scandal of the century, the CIP scandal, which is a sore point for this administration. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to introduce the Public Relations Officer of the United Workers' Party, who will deal with the issues of the crime situation and also the vendors' dislocation in our country. I give you Mr. Spider Leonard Montoot.
Thank you very much, Senator Fede. Let me say a special good morning to members of the media, a special good morning to our guests, and of course to those of you watching online, whether here in St. Lucia or in the diaspora, a special good morning to you. Unfortunately, I do not know how good of a morning it is in St. Lucia, given what is transpiring and given the situation that we are experiencing under this oppressive government that we have conducting governance in St. Lucia. I want to speak first of all on the situation that has developed with the vendors in the city of Castries. We have seen in a very oppressive manner the representative for Castries and the minister in Prime Minister's Philip J. Pierre's office responsible for local government, Richard Frederick, the manner in which he has behaved, that is after, during the election campaign, promising to champion the cause of vendors, he has turned around, betrayed their trust, break his promise, and in a most egregious manner, treated the vendors in a very inhumane way. We have seen that he has unceremoniously dismantled some of the vending equipment and displaced some of the vendors with nowhere else, no option to turn to in terms of vending their craft, and has swiftly been able to replace the vending sites with flower pots, where he personally was on site to ensure that he blocked every opportunity for vendors to continue to ply their trade. Now, this kind of behavior clearly indicates that a government who promised to put people first is, again, betraying the promise that they made, betraying the trust that the people placed in them based on those promises, and is in fact showing their true character and quality. I think the vile behavior of Richard Frederick that has been demonstrated in several different ways in the recent past, is something that ought to be brought to a halt. The Prime Minister, who has Richard Frederick in his office as a minister, who should at least take responsibility for the behavior that Richard Frederick is displaying and demonstrating. Because since Richard Frederick locked arm with Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre, we have seen Richard Frederick assume that attitude, that gangster-style approach to dealing with St. Lucians. We have seen him on his talk show where he has intimidated and attacked private citizens, where he has abused women, and in fact boasts of having files on private citizens coming from the police that he could choose to, according to him, go to his archives and expose and attack people as a government minister using his privileged position to do so. These are the circumstances that exist in our democracy today that cannot be allowed to thrive, and I'm calling on the Prime Minister, who himself has not shown any signs of good leadership since assuming office, to take a stand and deal with it. These are the kinds of things, and I will segue a little, that will give rise and embolden criminals in our country. Because when you see lawlessness taking place from the top, what do you expect to trickle down? And of course, we don't even talk about petty crimes. We don't even talk about robberies and physical assaults. We focus mainly on homicides because that is the ultimate. When a life is taken, that is irreversible, that is the ultimate. We have the chilling statistics of having 40 St. Lucians having lost their lives so far this year in less than 6 months. This seemed to have become normal to us to the extent that our government, who boasts of a Minister of Home Affairs, a Minister of National Security, the Prime Minister himself, a Minister of Crime Prevention, and an Attorney General, all of whom are sitting in high offices being paid by taxpayers of this country, they have nothing to say and very little to do with the crime situation that is burgeoning in our country today. This is unacceptable. This cannot be allowed to continue. And we must, as a country, take a stand to let it be known that we cannot be overrun by rogues and gangsters and criminal elements, nor be governed by a government who seem to be facilitators of that situation. So I am calling once again, after we just experienced over this last weekend what I refer to as a bloody weekend, another bloodbath, St. Lucia being drenched in the blood of our young sons in particular. We witnessed 5 homicides over the last weekend, between Friday and Sunday, 5 homicides. There seemed to be an acceptance by the government that it is business as usual. That seemed to be normal to our government, to the extent that up to this minute, we have not heard any decisive, definitive statement by our government as to what it is they intend to do to curb this situation, to calm the fears of St. Lucians, and to bring St. Lucia back to normalcy as a peace-loving country where crime is not allowed to fester and St. Lucians can enjoy their freedoms without the fear of criminals. So again, I am calling on the Prime Minister of St. Lucia with the hope that it will make a difference, that he dismiss the ineffective and failed Minister of National Security. I am calling on the Prime Minister to understand that the gimmick that he pulled on St. Lucians a few months ago, by naming a Minister of Crime Prevention, not even detailing to us what exactly that portfolio entailed, what were the functions, responsibilities, and duties of that minister would be. And if I were to understand, going simply by the nomenclature of that portfolio, we can say that that minister has failed. Because if his job is crime prevention, and in one weekend, we have 5 homicides, not even considering other criminal activities, he has already failed. So the government has to take stock, come out and say to us, what is your plan? Especially in light of the fact that the opposition has offered suggestions and recommendations to the government. And the Prime Minister, who is the Minister of National Security, no less, made a public statement that he discarded the recommendations and suggestions, that he threw it in the bin. Mr. Prime Minister, you have two options. You either go back to the bin to get the recommendations, because under our watch, crime was under better control than it is today. You either go back to the bin or you replace the Minister of National Security with someone who will do better than you are doing currently. And of course, we would appreciate and understand that after a record-setting year in 2022 of 75 homicides in St. Lucia, and a repetition of that in 2023, another 75 St. Lucians perishing, losing their lives as a result of violent crime. We are now again on the way to not this time only equaling that record, but if we are to continue this present trend, we are going to break that record. These are not the records we want to set in St. Lucia. These are not the things we want to be known for as a country here in St. Lucia. So, sir, please, something has to be done. Dismiss the Minister of National Security. Take control of your minister in your Prime Minister's office, Richard Frederick, his vile, intimidating, oppressive behavior, attacking citizens, and especially in light of what he has just done to the vendors of this country. And these are incidentally among the people of the lower echelon of our economics in St. Lucia. If you care, like you claim you are, do something about it. I will not delve into the many other scandals that is hovering over this present government. I will stop at this juncture. At the end, after our political leader and leader of the opposition has made his contribution, if you should have any questions for me, I will be happy to answer. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Spider. We note this week that the Labour Party's public relations machinery is in full gear. The weapons of mass distraction, I call them, WMDs. What they are trying to do is to get us to focus our attention away from this embarrassing scandal, the CIP scandal. But we have got news for them. We are going to stick to the messaging. We're going to stick to the issue. We're going to continue to call for answers to the many questions that they refuse to answer on this CIP scandal. We are going to stick to the many questions. We will continue to call for answers as to why hasn't the government come out and tell us what is the strategy for crime? What is the strategy to reduce the youth unemployment rate of 25%? There has been a gross mismanagement of our country in all sorts of areas. Agriculture is down. St. Lucia was the worst performing economy in the OECS. And Spider has just told you, when it comes to the management of crime, we are the homicide capital of all OECS countries. We have recorded among the highest number of homicides within the OECS countries. But yet the government would like us to believe that there is a subgrouping or a sub-regional pandemic which is taking place as in the crime situation. So there is no escaping. There is no relenting from focusing on the questions that matter. So you see the Labour Party raise these issues about a statement made about war. I mean, nonsense, absolute nonsense. Clearly the leader of the opposition, when he spoke, when he used the word war, he wasn't talking about declaring war against anybody. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a war against corruption. That's what we're talking about. We're talking a war against the mismanagement of our passports, a mismanagement of our country's reputation overseas. That's what it is about. Don't try to confuse the people of this country so that you can escape from answering the real questions that really matter. So go tell your spin doctors to try another issue, because the UWP is remaining focused on the issues that really matter, and the issues that really matter we are talking about them today. So you can continue to twist our statements. Instead of playing our entire statements, you only choose to cut out 10 seconds, and you make an ad from 10 seconds. That's the oldest trick in the book. St. Lucians are more intelligent than that. Nobody is falling for your bluff. And when do you choose to do it? You choose to do it when there's a big CIP scandal that none of you want to answer. None of you can tell us, respond to the many questions that we have raised, the many questions that have emerged from this international scandal of the century. I give to you the leader of the opposition and the political leader of the United Workers' Party, former Prime Minister, Honorable Alan Shaston.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fede, Mr. Montoute, and members of the media and other guests. As Mr. Fede has said, that we have a crisis on our hands in which the government is living in denial. And that denial of this crisis, in our humble opinion, is going to create significant damage to the reputation of St. Lucia internationally, is going to put in jeopardy our visa-free access to the world, and could have very damning consequences against our financial institutions, our banking and our correspondent relationships. Yesterday, the CEO of Invest St. Lucia put out a statement. I think it's important to note that the statement was not a personal statement. The statement is on the letterhead of the CIP unit. And it speaks specifically a statement by the Chief Executive Officer of the Citizenship by Investment Program. It's important to understand that he is speaking as a representative of the government and the people of St. Lucia. And he has an obligation to be truthful and factual because he is a public officer. His statement, in fact, has actually generated more questions than there are answers. First question: can he verify that he went to D.C.? I believe his statement confirms that he went to D.C., to Washington, D.C. Who did he go with? In the interview with MSR, they said he went with his wife. Why would a person who is claiming that he went to Washington, D.C. to defend the reputation of the CIP unit, which in essence is to defend the reputation of the people of this country, go to a meeting of this nature with your wife? I can understand the compassion of the situation, but don't you think that this would have called for a member of your board to have gone with you? Don't you think that the Attorney General's office should have been involved, and either for a lawyer from the Attorney General's office, or the Attorney General could have appointed a lawyer from the United States of America who would be familiar with what is at stake to attend the meeting with you? But instead, what do we have? You're asking us to make a decision as to who was speaking the truth. Is it Mr. Martinez, who came out since Thursday, or you, that have hidden behind a statement? You didn't even have the courage to have a press conference to allow the local media to ask you the pertinent questions, to bring clarity to what you have written. We heard in the interview with MSR that you had a phone conversation with Mr. Martinez on Thursday, and that by Friday you were in his office. What was that conversation that would have caused you to have rushed up to go and see him? And when you rushed up, you're saying in your statement that you went there to defend the reputation of the unit. So therefore, who from the government knew that you were going? Was it with the blessing of the Prime Minister? Was it with the blessing of the Attorney General's office? Was it with the blessing of the lawyers that represent the CIP unit? Was it with the blessing of your board? Was it with the blessing of the minister? That's a very important question, because you can't just simply say, I went there to defend the reputation of the unit without explaining who gave you the authority to do that. But now again, we're forced to be, who do we believe? And again, I want to say, you never told us you were going. You came back, you didn't say that you went. It took MSR to have an interview on the local media to reveal that you went. You still didn't come out with a statement. You waited until yesterday. How do we believe you? Another question. What information did you provide to MSR that would have caused Mr. Martinez to now change the minister from being a co-conspirator to now a co-defendant? I heard Mr. Martinez say that you said that you were an order taker and that the persons running the CIP program was the board and the minister. But we would like to know, what is it that you did say, because it is clearly out of your meeting with MSR that MSR decided to change the minister to become now a co-defendant. That a minister of the government of St. Lucia now has been labeled as a co-defendant in a RICO case in the United States of America. When you went up, in the claim that Mr. Martinez had, he indicated that one of the reasons why he included you as a co-defendant was because he had an audio of you admitting to how the CIP program was being abused. Did you get to hear that audio? Can you confirm the authenticity of the audio? Can you confirm the content of what is in the audio? Because it seems that MSR is laying a lot of or relying heavily on that audio as to why you should be included. I would have thought that that would be one of the things that you could have gone and confirmed, that that was part of your discussions. Another question. MSR, Mr. Martinez in his interview said that you said that there were 13,000 files. That's news for us in St. Lucia. We don't know. You've never told us. You didn't tell us how those files are broken down. How many of those files are for the real estate program with Galaxy, and how many of those files are with the infrastructure program? And why is it you believe that you should go and tell Mr. Martinez that when you are accountable to us? So I can say, sir, that your statement is inconsistent with the facts. Because even without you answering those questions, there's a lot of concerns. And in the legal parlance, what that means is that in this statement, you have perjured yourself. You've lied. There's no two ways about it. So whereas the opposition had been calling for your suspension pending an investigation, we've now changed that. We're demanding that you be fired because of the perjury that you have committed. That we no longer, as the people, can trust that you're going to do the right thing. Because, sir, whether you want to accept it or not, your statement came across as an attempt to save yourself with your own party, and not one to provide truthful, factual information to the people of this country. Not on one in which I can say, or anyone can say, that you went there and you genuinely went to protect the reputation of the state. In fact, according to the statements made by MSR, you claimed that the Prime Minister knew nothing about the CIP program. And I agree with Mr. Martinez. He said that he's going to take that for face value. But it has to be followed up with action. The only way that the Prime Minister can genuinely say and support the idea that he has nothing to do with CIP is to make sure that you're fired. And that he removes the minister, Mr. Hilaire, from his portfolios. He relieves him immediately of his portfolios. And that immediately all the files that are being processed at the CIP for Galaxy be put on suspension. And that the immediate appointment of a capable company to do an audit of the CIP program to determine whether in fact some of the allegations that are being made are true. So the minister now has said that tonight he's going to make a public statement. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night. Why? A situation like this calls for him to have a press conference with his board and with the CEO in which they can answer questions rather than hide behind statements and then to use propaganda to try to substantiate those statements. Because like this statement, it does not take a genius to see through it as to what the intention was. There's no truth in any of this. None of this was intended to protect the people and the reputation of our country. This was intended to protect his party, to protect his minister, to protect his prime minister, and to protect the board. Even though he told MSR that he was an order taker, and they're the ones running the program. So I think that in order to help the minister in his statement, I think that there's some things that the minister needs to address immediately. The minister needs to provide clarity. His unit and he both have said that Galaxy's hotel project has now sold all of the files. But he's never told us how many. He's never told us how much money is in the escrow account. He's never given us an explanation that if in fact all the files have been sold, so it means that Galaxy would have collected all of the money that they were supposed to have collected. Why is the project so far behind schedule? Look at the Marriott Courtyard at Point Seraphin, which started about the same time. Look how far it is. Sandals has opened up Halcyon. Sandals is renovating La Toc. Massive renovations taking place at the Wyndham. he owes us an explanation. How many fowls have been sold? How much money was collected? And how much money is in the escrow account? And when do we think that the hotel is going to be finished? The minister needs to also provide clarity on the infrastructure program. What is it? There are no regulations. Again, we had to find out from somebody other than the government who the developer was. So it's not until Galaxy came out and put in their press statement that they were the developers that we even knew they were developers. How many fowls have they sold under the infrastructure program? Where is the money gone? What projects are you going to do? But even more importantly, and I really want the patience of the public of St. Lucia and the media to understand this, why would you have an infrastructure program when you already have the donation program? So the donation program is that $100,000 goes into the CIP unit and goes into the economic fund, which has a board of directors of 5 public servants. You amended the rules to say any project that Cabinet wants, you can have. So if Cabinet chooses to build homes with the money, they can. If they want to do infrastructure, they can. If they want to do social programs, they can. Whatever you want. So that program exists. But you're now saying that you're starting another program called infrastructure, which was started under the Labour Party, where $100,000 is going to go to Galaxy. You can't tell us into what account. You can't tell us what the projects are. And I also want to make it very clear. We are not here to defend MSR. MSR is a separate case that's taking place in the United States of America, but it's the evidence and the allegations that are made in the MSR and the similarities to St. Lucia that has us disturbed. So MSR is saying that in St. Kitts, Galaxy was given a program that's very similar to the infrastructure program to build a prison in St. Kitts. And the cost of the prison was $50 million US. And Galaxy was given 5,000 files at $200,000 a file. So that means that they were going to raise $1 billion to build a $50 million prison. And the prison hasn't been built. And we have a similar program here where you have Galaxies involved with an infrastructure program. So why is it you've not asked Galaxy to finish the hotel before you've done the infrastructure program with them? If in fact MSR is correct in its allegations, and it's not just MSR that has laid those allegations, it is also the current government in St. Kitts who have now said that there were 8,000 files. $1.6 billion should have been collected. And the prison is not finished. How is it that Galaxy put in their statement that they're also collecting the fees? That's illegal. It is the CIP board that's supposed to collect the fees. So we remain extremely concerned. The allegations by MSR. We're very concerned with the statement, the damning statement that the CEO has made, and we're demanding that he be fired immediately for perjuring himself and lying to the people of St. Lucia. We're again reiterating that the Prime Minister ought to relieve the Minister of his portfolios, freeze all of the files with Galaxy, and allow for an independent investigation because there's way too much at risk. And if we don't act urgently and show the world that we're taking this thing seriously, then I fear that we will lose our visa-free access because we'd be in breach of the confidence that those countries have given to us. That our banking system can be tainted, and there would be negative consequences to all of us if they do that. And if this government continues to run away from what the truth is, it is going to be at all our peril. And so the last statement I want to make is this government has continuously said that the passports are not, our visa-free regime is not in danger of being lost. They've indicated that I've exaggerated about the banking system, so I want to put it on record. If, in fact, through your denials and mismanagement of this current crisis, that we do lose our visa-free access, or our banking system is tightened because of the result of this case, then you all should resign immediately. And not only resign, you should not put yourself back up to run for government. But the evidence will be very soon in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Political Leader and Leader of the Opposition, former Prime Minister Alan Chasney, who have made some very, very strong recommendations to strengthen our CIP program. We have asked for the termination of both the Minister and the CEO. Mr. Chasney has also asked to put all the 13,000, 56,000 potential passports, which is claimed by Mr. Martinez, to put those on hold. And then he has asked for an independent audit of the operations of the CIP unit. Since the government is not forthcoming with the information, I think then the public needs to know what is really happening with the passports of St. Lucia, what is happening with our CIP program. Now, we've got several questions that have come in already via Facebook for both gentlemen, but before we take questions on Facebook, I think we would like to prioritize members of the media that are here. So if you've got any questions for our panel, this is your time to do it before we go to Facebook.
I have a question for the Leader of the Opposition.
If you send it, I'll just repeat it for our audience on Facebook who are not able to. Yeah.
So, Caribbean Galaxy did come to St. Lucia under your government. And the hotel project in Connell's was started, the contract was signed by you. Can you tell us how many units Caribbean Galaxy were awarded for that project? And can you tell us, if you have any knowledge, how many of these were sold while moving on this?
So the question here for the Leader of the Opposition is that the Caribbean Galaxy Hotel development actually started under the United Workers' Party administration during the time that he was Prime Minister. And one of the journalists here would like to know how many files, how many passports were approved in the contract with Caribbean Galaxy. Mr. Political Leader.
Thank you very much. My recollection is, remember, the real estate program was being sold for $300,000. And I believe the number of units that they were allowed to sell, or the number of shares they were allowed to sell, was around 1,500. About a year ago, the government amended it so that they could sell it for 200,000. What I don't know is that what this administration amended that contract to be.
That would be my next question. If you were aware, or if you had any idea whether or not Caribbean Galaxy have been awarded additional units for that same project.
The question is whether Galaxy was awarded additional units. I have to presume that that's the case. Because if you lowered it from 300,000 to 200,000, it means that they're going to make less, and the cost may have gone up because of inflation and COVID. All I know is that when we came in, we were aware of some of the allegations against Galaxy as it pertains to the Ramada Hotel. So that's why we were very clear to have an escrow account. And again, the escrow account is a joint account in which the CIP board was a signature to the account. At any time, CIP can get the amount of money that's in the account. And they can also cross-check. So if a file comes in and they're supposed to have collected $300,000, they can confirm the $300,000 came in for person X. So there is a very clear, transparent check and balance system that was left for them. How they draw down the money is pre-agreed. So how much money they can use for, we call FF&E, how much money can be used for the design, how much money they can get for mobilization, all those things were in place before we left. Now remember, When we left, after the signing of the project, and remember, we had a press conference in which we sat down with Galaxy and also AMR, who were the management companies, and the CIP board, fully transparent. They had a groundbreaking ceremony, and everybody got to see for themselves what was taking place. So I'm very shocked and alarmed that a government that came in and had made allegations that they had concerns about Galaxy, why would they now do a new program, which is this infrastructure program, and the hotel's not finished?
A follow-up question. You have been accused of colluding with MSI Media to embarrass the country. What are your statements to that, and have you had any contact whatsoever with Philip Martinez, and what was the nature of that contact, if there was any?
Please repeat the question.
The question is that I've been accused of colluding with MSR and to damage the reputation of the country, and whether in fact that I've had any contact with MSR. I am the leader of the opposition, and so an opportunity was provided for me to meet with the lawyers of MSR, which I did. I only knew about MSR and Philip Martinez like everybody else. When he made it public that he was going to file this lawsuit, this RICO lawsuit, and he gave the government the opportunity also to meet with him. In fact, I found out that a local lawyer here was the one representing Tim Harris, and that goes back almost a year ago when that case started. But like everybody else, it's only in the last couple of weeks that I've met Mr. Martinez. I heard about Mr. Martinez. I have never personally met Mr. Martinez. I have spoken to him on a phone. And as I said, I was briefed by his lawyers of the details of the case so I could understand what the case is. But I have no influence. The United Workers' Party cannot substantiate in any way what is being said and what is being done. I understand why he's doing the case, because he feels aggrieved, and that is his case. What I am concerned about is the evidence that he has provided, particularly on the prison project in St. Kitts, and the similarities between that project and the infrastructure project in St. Lucia. And when I see a program being done and that there are no regulations, nobody can provide us with any information, it's very concerning, because that's exactly what took place in St. Kitts. In fact, in our case, it's even worse than what's taking place in St. Kitts. I am very concerned that when I hear that he is subpoenaing banks in the United States, which are our correspondent banks, and saying to them that the banks here processed transactions illegally. And I understand the consequences of that, because that's what caused the de-risking in the first place. That's real. So we are not going to be involved. I cannot substantiate his case, whether it's legitimate or not, but I can say to you that there are aspects of the case that are very worrisome. And it's even more worrisome because this government that we have continues to try to confuse people with the real estate program and the infrastructure program. Yes, we did bring Galaxy to St. Lucia. We brought them for the real estate, the hotel. So we knew what they were building. The designs of the hotel are there. The costings of the hotel are there. Work had already begun. There's an escrow account. Why is it that this infrastructure program is not being done as transparently? And what makes it even more concerning is when you get conflicting information. So we continuously find out details about this program from third parties. We found out that Galaxy was the developer. Not from the government, from Galaxy. We found out from MSR that our CEO went up to meet with him. We didn't find it out from the government, we found it out from them. We found out from MSR that he reported that there was 13,000 files. That's not been reported to us.
When did you hear the allegations of Galaxy?
There had been several allegations within the region of companies that were discounting. There was never any specific allegations about the Galaxy program in St. Lucia. But I did bring it up with the board, and the board assured me that they had controls put in place to make sure there could not be any discounting.
These allegations were before you signed a contract with Galaxy or no?
After. The allegations that we'd heard about Galaxy beforehand was the Ramada Hotel, and that it had not been finished. And I personally went up to St. Kitts, saw the Ramada was on the verge of being opened. I'd spoken to the then government about Galaxy. And what we decided to do was to put in measures to protect us. So the first measure was to make sure they signed up a management company that we felt that would do a great job in marketing the project. So Ramada is not really a well-known brand in this part of the world. But AMR is. That the design of the hotel was an all-inclusive hotel and a product that we thought that could be successful. And we made sure that there was an escrow account. As I said to you, we spent a lot of time trying to open up an escrow account here in St. Lucia. And the banks and the entities would not do it. So it was agreed that the escrow account would be opened up in China. And China was chosen because that's where most of the expenditure was going to come from. There was a contract signed with that escrow agent. It's an independent agency. And the money can be checked every single day. You have an opportunity, the CIP board, to check that money. And as I said to you, to balance it between who paid and how much they paid. So you can authenticate that. And the drawdown of the monies has to be done with the joint authority. So the contract says specifically what can be done. So we attempted to make sure that the hotel was going to be completed, and that when it was completed, that it was going to be a world-class hotel that we thought that could do very well. I mean, one of the things that we've seen in CIP with the hotels is the brands that they have chosen aren't very good.
Could you explain the due diligence process?
The due diligence process remains the same. So all files go through the CIP. I'm very proud of the fact that we were one of the ones who really instigated and strengthened the RSSS and impacts. So all the files would go to the police agency here, which is Special Branch. Special Branch either sent it off to FIA if they had concerns, and they sent it off to RSSS. RSSS sent it off to impacts. In addition to that, you have WorldSpan, and then you had what was called third-party person. So if the person lived in Canada, there would be a firm that you would use that would actually authenticate and confirm that the person existed, that that job that they claimed that they had was a real job, that the money and the wealth that they said that they had, that there was evidence of that wealth. So in each of the different regions, they have what we call third-party companies that do that further authentication. So I just want to say that we sometimes want to bundle everything together. They're all very separate and apart. The issue at hand is there is an ability on the government of St. Lucia to hold Galaxy accountable for the monies that they've received and to make sure that the hotel is being built. There are mechanisms that are built in to protect us from that not happening. The infrastructure program, which is this new program, does not have that. There's been no press announcements, there's been no press conferences, there's been no regulations passed. Nobody's told us what the infrastructure programs are, nobody's told us where the money is going to go.
Based on information that we received, and also on a Facebook post from a well-known party member, SLP party member, it would seem that Mr. Emmanuel, when his control was not satisfied with the government. What are your thoughts on that in light of what was said yesterday?
The statement says otherwise. The statement said he went there to defend the reputation of the CIP unit. As I said, the statement is on the CIP letterhead and comes across as being from the CEO. And that's why I said we have to ask the question. If you went up there representing the state, who gave you permission to do that? He doesn't say that.
Well, it's been said that he was not sanctioned by
But who said that?
Well, we're no party member.
Look, I understand that the Speaker of the House would have said it, but the Speaker of the House doesn't sit on the board. You would have thought that the Prime Minister would have made this statement. You would have thought the Minister would have made a statement. You would have thought the board would have made a statement. The board itself is in confusion because we don't know if it has a chairman or not. Because, you know, we hear that he's resigned, and that's a really good issue to bring up. These innocuous statements from persons who are not authorized to speak on behalf of the state. So where is it that the chairman of the board has resigned? Has the media seen any letter from Lauren Theophilus that he's resigned? Has the board put out a statement to say that the chairman has resigned? But yet, we walk around and act as if the chairman has resigned. That's why I said on Sunday, I'm not prepared to accept that. We need authentication that that's the fact. And I want to put them, before they answer that question, the CIP Act requires them to have a chairman. So what is it? And so I have to presume that there's still a chairman. Did the chairman give his CEO the authority to go to Washington, D.C.? And again, if he didn't, then he should be fired. Somebody has to go. Because again, Mr. Emanuel is saying in his statement that he went there to defend the reputation of the CIP. He's put it on a letterhead of the CIP. We can only go by with what, that's what I'm saying to you, that he's committed perjury because the facts are not consistent with his statement. And that's why I can say to you that he needs to be fired immediately.
The bits of what we're hearing from the board from the different various quarters, do you think that he's being used as a scapegoat?
Look, I think that we can, like this government, they cause us to speculate on a lot of different things. If I am to interpret what this statement is, this is a statement attempted to protect the Prime Minister, attempting to protect the Minister, and to hell with the public. So the people have come last. And you cannot hold a position as the CEO of the CIP. And as I said in my statement on Sunday, I want to appeal to the public servants and persons who are executives on statutory bodies that, unlike what they may think, they are accountable to the people and they're accountable to the law, not to the ministers. I also want to repeat that if in fact that there is any audit or criminal investigation, it is not the minister who's going to go to jail. It's not the minister who's going to have to pay any money. It's you, the public servant, because the signature that's going to go on the documents is yours. A minister doesn't sign. Ministers sign things like MOUs. But legal documents are the CEO. So even when the CEO goes up and says to Mr. Martinez that he's an order taker and that the person is driving the program, then you shouldn't be there. Why are you paying this man all this big money to be an order taker? Anybody can be an order taker. And that's what I'm saying to you, the inconsistency of the statement. So we don't know if the chairman has resigned. We don't know who gave him permission or if anybody gave him permission to go up. Yet he says that he did. He wants us to believe that his word against Mr. Martinez's word. And from what I understand, not only did he meet with Mr. Martinez, he also met with Mr. Martinez's lawyers. So if this has to be, push comes to shove, and somebody has to put out affidavits as to what happened at the meeting, I would imagine there's going to be several voices against his. But that's the position that he put the people of St. Lucia in. He's compromised our own integrity. And the question is, did he meet with anybody else while he was in Washington, D.C.? Because, you know, we keep on talking about the civil case here that MSR has filed. So unlike St. Lucia, in America, there are several different entities that can file cases, prosecute cases. The FBI, Homeland Security, Justice Department, district attorneys. If in fact evidence comes to them, they can start an investigation of their own. So when people subpoena banks and make allegations of fraud, you really don't believe that that's going to trigger off some kind of investigation? And that's why I gave the example of what took place in Barbados. That in a court case, an insurance company admitted to bribing a minister of government. The government of Barbados, and no one in Barbados, charged that minister with fraud and corruption. But it was found out that when he was paid the money, that he transferred the money to his account in New York City. So when he traveled to the States, he was arrested and he was charged for money laundering. And he was convicted and spent 2 years in jail. So this investigation is no longer just a domestic case, because once the money goes internationally, it becomes international. And other countries now are going to be part of the jurisdiction. And this is what we're saying, is the government of St. Lucia is not taking this matter seriously. This has nothing to do with us. It does. If in fact that you are allowing Galaxy to sell CIPs and making sure and not ensuring that all the monies are being collected, then that's fraud. And when that money goes through the international banking system, that becomes money laundering.
In light of the severity of this case, what would be your case? Because the Prime Minister keeps saying that this is not a government case, no government has taken this up. He keeps saying that the U.S. State Department hasn't said anything, nobody has been served any papers. Is there the possibility that the U.S. State Department can take us to task because of this? We know the potential ramifications when it comes to visa-free access, but now we're talking about criminal charges. Is there the potential for criminal charges against anyone involved in the CIP or involved in the government because of this RICO lawsuit?
The State Department is the equivalent of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here. So I've never heard of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in St. Lucia taking any kind of criminal cases against anyone. So I don't know of the State Department. The State Department is an agent and acts based on the policies of the government. So if Leahy law is not foreign affairs, it's the Congress. And that if in fact that you're found in breach of the Leahy law, it's for the Ministry of State Department to implement it, not to impose it. The entities that would potentially prosecute this case or raise criminal charges in this case: FBI, Justice Department, Homeland Security, as I said, district attorneys' offices. I mean, we watch what's going on in the States right now with the cases with the former president. It's all over the place. Georgia, New York, Fed, multiple of agents can go after you. It depends on what the infraction is. So if it is human trafficking, it's going to be one department. If it's financial, it's going to be a different department. But we've already seen that there are examples in this region where persons who have been involved in money laundering. We just had the premier of the BVI, right, who was up in Miami, and there was a sting operation and got him to go to the airport to count money. He's in jail. As I said to you, the former minister in Barbados. There are a multitude of examples of heads of states, of government officials that have been arrested outside of their own jurisdiction. Because once money goes through an international banking system, it now allows other jurisdictions to be involved. So the answer to your question is, I don't know specifically. But I know that once subpoenas are being issued and allegations are being made, in the international world, whether it's the US, whether it's Canada, whether it's UK, whether it's Europe, that they're going to investigate the matter. It's the timing of things. You had 3 Chinese persons who obtained their citizenship in St. Kitts that were just recently arrested for money laundering, for human trafficking, and all kinds of questions as to how those passports were approved. You just had a massive election in the Parliament of Europe in which the right-wing parties have won even more. The right-wing parties want greater border control, want higher standards. We saw what took place with the blacklisting. We cannot defend ourselves against these things. We become easy prey.
All right, a couple of questions from Facebook, sir, because we're running out of time. I want to thank you, members of the media, so graciously for your questions. So one has to do with, someone is asking, could you explain the quashing of a subpoena by the U.S. courts against MSR application for the bank accounts of Galaxy and a former Prime Minister in Dr. Tim Harris to be brought subpoena?
Look, I'm not a lawyer, but on reading what it was, and persons who want to believe that the quashing of the subpoena somehow is going to dismantle or terminate MSR's case, that's how I've read it. This has nothing to do with the RICO case. The RICO case stands by itself. My understanding is that the subpoena was squashed on a technicality. I'm involved in several cases here in St. Lucia, and I know sometimes you lose a decision and you appeal. In reading this, I think that the judge was very clear that he supported MSR on the substantive issues, but there was a technicality that can be overcome by MSR. But I am not here, and United Workers' Party is not here to defend the MSR case. That's a quite separate matter from us. It's the revelations in the case that have us more concerned.
Yeah. Another question from Facebook. Are you concerned that reports for 2 financial years of the CIP unit are outstanding? And is there anything to hide?
Look, I'm very concerned. So if you go on the website of CIP, all of us can do that, you'll see that every single year that we were in office, there is an audit report. The last audit report was for 2022. So 2022...
Financial year ending...
in 2022.
March 2022.
Correct. So between 22-23 and 23 and 24, there are no audit reports. And this is important because it is a legal requirement of the CIP program. And this is especially coming from a government that made several allegations multiple times that we were not providing the information. You know, even in the reports that are online, I mean, it's online. So when people talk about freedom of information, this information is online, on the website of the CIP program. That the number of passports that were issued under our government was about 800. We're hearing now of 13,000 files to one company, to Galaxy. That could potentially be 50,000 passports. Why should we be asking those questions? And the format of the information, which is an auditor report, a third party is substantiating the information to be correct. That's how we give comfort. That's part of our democracy. doesn't exist. And it's one of the things that we've asked this government, that they immediately must provide a report to Parliament and to the people of St. Lucia. How many passports have been sold? How much money have they collected? How much money is in the escrow account? How much money has been collected for the infrastructure program? And where is that money?
Yeah. I have a question here from DBS Television.
Actually, first off, the Director of Public Prosecutions, that's been appointed under your administration. Can you remind us of what was his, because I remember during the taking of the book, he actually expressed his intention to do a list of things that should be in for a time period. Can you remind us of that, what he had promised to you as Prime Minister that he would have done in taking over that role?
Look, I think the DPP had done really an admirable job. When he first came in, there was no department. I mean, it was in name only. The previous DPP had left. There had not been any replacements to him. The department was severely understaffed. It was under-equipped. It was almost like there was a deliberate attempt to marginalize the office. And I'm hearing similar complaints now, that persons who've retired, they've not been replaced, the air quality is bad, equipment is not being replaced, and funds are not being provided. And my understanding is the DPP and his office is very frustrated, but that's for him to defend. And that's why I called him out specifically as an example of an individual who is constitutionally protected. He's given certain rights and protections so that he can feel free to say something that may be unpopular. And he should not feel compromised in any way. And that he has a responsibility under the Constitution to stand up and say those things. There were several cases, impacts, the Green case internationally, local cases as well, and the DPP systematically went through those different cases. So he showed that a DPP's office can function. I think that one of the misconceptions about the DPP's office is that the DPP is an investigator. He's not. The DPP's office is a prosecutor. So if there's a murder that's taking place, it is for the police to have done an investigation, provide the evidence to the DPP, and for the DPP to say, yes, there's enough evidence for us to proceed with a prosecution. That's why even with impacts, when the Jamaicans were doing the investigation outside of St. Lucia and not in coordination with the DPP was a breach. But the DPP cannot do the investigation by himself. So when we hear about a special prosecutor, okay, that's great. How much staff does he have? He's a lawyer. Who's going to do the investigations? How is that information going to be provided to him? How much money is being put to investigate all of these different things? But I think there's a general perception that you can go and bring a file to the special prosecutor or to the DPP and that they're just going to prosecute. All that evidence has to be substantiated or collected.
Now, are you satisfied with his work so far? Against, I'm just opposing that against what he said he would have done.
If I'm disappointed is that if in fact that he is being frustrated, and if in fact that his work programs are being marginalized by government policy, then he has an obligation to say so. I think that he's promised that he was going to come out with a press statement. He has not. On the impacts, just before the elections, in the negotiations with the Americans as it pertained to Leahy, all the cases were investigated. It was agreed that there was evidence to proceed on 2 of those cases. And now 3 years has gone by and nothing has happened. I think he owes us an explanation as to why that's the case. If in fact it's true that he's instructed the Commissioner of Police to arrest some people and they have not, then he owes it to us to say so. Do I think that he's a capable person? I do. Do I think that he did a lot to improve our system? He did. But I am not walking in his shoes. And so, am I disappointed right now? Yes, like a lot of people.
Okay. In terms of the development of anti-crime strategies and crime prevention minister was tasked with, has the opposition submitted any, recommendations
Should we get Spider to handle that since he spoke in crime today?
Yeah.
Is that all right? Yeah.
Yeah, so the question was, with regard to the newly appointed
Yeah, crime prevention
minister,
where the Prime Minister said he was tasked with developing a national, well, as he said, anti-crime plan. Have you submitted officially, well, through the official channels, any recommendations for that?
well, I don't know that since he said so that we have, but in the past, when the Prime Minister first, well, when the crime situation first broke out, we didn't wait for us to be asked. We submitted some recommendations. I think it was a 10-point plan as to how crime could be tackled, and that is what the Prime Minister referred to as the document that he threw in the bin. Subsequently, the Prime Minister, realizing that the situation had in fact gotten worse, publicly came out, admitted that he had no answers, and called for assistance. We again resubmitted our recommendations, and again, nothing was done. We have made it public that we are open to participating in any kind of forum where we're going to discuss crime fighting in St. Lucia, where stakeholders would be asked to make suggestions and so on, especially in light of the fact that we now know that the present government has no plan for crime fighting other than buying vehicles. And of course, the Prime Minister has totally abdicated his responsibility, given the fact that he is not a police officer, according to him, and that it was his father who was a police officer. But we are thinking that, yeah, he can get help from police officers, and there are people who are not police officers who have great ideas as to crime fighting, and the opposition, just like we did during our time when there was an escalation in crime, we put measures in place, whether directly in assisting the police, in equipping the police, legislative changes, social programs, what have you. We stand ready to share with the current government, because this is a national issue. This is not a political issue like the Prime Minister is trying to make it. And we recognize the implications for such a situation for the entire country. And as such, as a responsible political organization in this country, we stand ready, and we are reiterating that position. We stand ready to assist in any possible way in the crime fighting effort.
Yesterday, the crime prevention minister revealed that he has had consultations with a few stakeholders. He also revealed that they're looking for a consultant to develop a strategy. But I'm going back to what was said in his swearing in, that he would be the one responsible for bringing all the various parties, including yourself, together to discuss this very plan. So your thoughts on now that, I guess, maybe is
Well,
being relegated to?
well, first of all, we welcome and appreciate the admission that they do not have a plan. We were told that the current Minister of National Security, we were told so by himself, that he was the most, I think the word he used, readied person to lead this country. Alas, we see what he has been readied for. We again reiterate our position. At very short notice, we will be prepared to contribute, to play our role, because we know for a fact that within the ranks of the United Workers' Party, in terms of plans, policies, and programs, we are in a position to make recommendations that will severely, in a very serious manner, impact the crime situation that is going on in this country. We cannot continue to have crime, to have homicide as one of the leading causes of death in St. Lucia. And if you observe, I think this is something that we are disregarding, the victims of homicide in St. Lucia are predominantly young people. And when you have one homicide, there are many other victims, not just the families of those who perish, but also the perpetrators and their families as well.
I'm just very comfortable with this. So there's these vehicles are replacements, not addition. This was defended by the Prime Minister and also the Deputy Police Commissioner at the last handover. Yesterday, the Crime Prevention Minister actually took the task. I'm not sure, I don't want to say who was referring to, but he didn't mention names, but as he said that there was a certain police officers that I guess acted on your behalf, who are challenging what is said and whatnot. He's taking issue with this police officer or police officer for making statements against the government and whatnot. I actually wanted to know, under your administration, during your administration, what was the case for the police? Did
Okay.
you have enough vehicles?
Okay, you see, again, it is about time that this current government understand the answer to our crime situation is not merely and solely providing vehicles to the police. It is a far wider issue than they understand it to be. And it is time that they understand that this is not, again, I'm repeating, it is not a political issue. Whenever they are asked questions, rather than putting out their plans and policies and their programs as to what it is exactly they're going to do to curb the situation, they descend into political rhetoric about who police officer is supporting us. And I mean, nobody is interested in that. We are interested in curbing the crime situation that has become a crisis in this country. The Prime Minister seemed to have suggested that you had to be a police officer to solve the problem. Well, he appointed a police officer to be the minister responsible for crime prevention. Have we seen any improvement in the crime situation in St. Lucia? These are the questions that must be answered, and these are the things that must be looked at. When we became the government of St. Lucia, in terms of direct assistance to the police, what we did was look at our border control. Okay, there were many of the boats, the patrol boats were inoperational. We got them to working. The lab, the forensic lab, we opened up the forensic lab and got it working. That goes a long way in crime solving as well. Okay, we started the program of placing CCTV cameras around the island. Again, not only did it serve in terms of crime solving, but it also served as a deterrent to crime as well. Not to mention equipment for the police. We started the negotiation to reverse the situation as far as the Leahy law is concerned, so that our police could begin to get first-class training once again. These are the measures that were taken. I mean, I'm not going to repeat that line about, and I know that our administration provided many transports by way of motorcycles, cars, vans, and so on. I'm not going to repeat that foolishness. That in itself. And let me just quote a prominent member of the St. Lucia Labour Party. The efforts that have been made and the strategies employed are not working. Dr. Kenny Anthony. Okay, so if when I say it, it is not appreciated, perhaps they will understand it when it is said by one of their own. The Prime Minister has not realized it, but he has been, and I repeat, an abject failure as a Minister of National Security. Under his watch, we have had the worst crime situation in St. Lucia. We have had the most homicides taking place in St. Lucia. And he cannot complain. He's the Minister of Finance. He's the Prime Minister. So resources should not be a problem. It is a question of policies. It is a question of not having a plan. You cannot govern a country without a plan. That is the bottom line. And if the Prime Minister is serious about alleviating our crime situation, the first step he must take is to dismiss the Minister of National Security, who, again, I'm saying, has been a total abject failure as a Minister of National Security.
All right, we want to thank you that the leader of the opposition may chime in on that crime conversation before we take any further questions. But we're also, I'm sensitive that we're running out of time. We're now over an hour and a half. And
do you have another question on the crime situation? Do you have another question on the crime situation?
No, that's it. But I wanted him to actually opine on the SLP's take on his declaration. know you have spoken on it and he has spoken, but I want to.
Distraction from answering the questions about how many passports do you have.
Well, and I would like you to ask the Prime Minister for us, what has he done by way of waging war on the many ills that are taking place in this country?
I just want to add really, really quickly because it's more current. We just heard the Minister for Crime Prevention say that St. Lucia doesn't manufacture guns, and that he acknowledged and accepted that our borders are porous, sorry. Okay? So border control, the implementation of border control, which was well on its way, this government stopped it. We had 2 canine dogs here, actually more than 2 canine dogs here. The government said it was too expensive and got rid of the canine dogs, which is specifically to try to deal with the guns and illegal stuff coming in at our ports. I was shocked when I heard the minister say that gang crime now has become international and regional, and therefore we needed a stronger regional police force. That's the same statement I made in Trinidad. It's the same statement we've been saying all along, and I want to echo what Mr. Montoute said. The government has no plans. It reminds me that when, remember in 2016, leading up to the elections, that they put together, what was it, a vision committee. And here we are in the 3rd year of this administration, and all they're doing is reiterating things that we've been saying and doing and acting as if it was their own. But the fact is, there's nothing genuine about what they're doing. I'm going to say to the media, just coming across the airways, because you asked a question, it says that coming out of the U.S. Department of State, is the United States is imposing sanctions today on individuals in Guyana. And it's coming out of an investigation conducted by the Treasury Department. So once there are allegations and it goes across borders and gets into the banking system, then it becomes now a fair game. And that is what we have to be concerned with. We have to control what we can control. We have to show that we're doing everything to say that we do not support any form of illegalities taking place.
Yeah. All right, so just one final question, and we're going to close the press conference. I'll be kind to you, young man, who's, I mean, I have to say this, that your media house is the most secretive ever. I don't know whether you're an espionage agent. I don't know who the owner, no, I've got to put it, because you see, the press is a custodian of the freedom and flow of information. And to just tell us who the owner of your media house is, you can't tell us. I mean, this is bizarre. So in this day and age, when we're operating in
Transparency.
an era of free speech and democracy, I find it very hard to believe, and this is not an attack on you, but I'm just saying that as a journalist, as a custodian of the truth, right? I find it hard to believe that you don't know whom the principles of your establishment is for. But we will allow you a question so that we can facilitate the free flow of information. Please go ahead.
No problem. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
And you'll pardon my tardiness. It was a bit difficult getting here. So yesterday, the Crime Prevention Minister called for you to retract statements made at your town hall meeting on Sunday, and he says that your declaration of war, or rather the use of the word war, or the phrase declaration of war as declare war, is a bit misplaced given the current crime situation.
What do you think?
Will you apologize?
What do you think?
The statement?
What do you think?
I'm asking.
No, but I'm asking you, what do you think?
Think in relation to his statement, or what do I think you will say?
Both. No, what do you think? What do you think of his statement? What do you think of my statement?
I think the minister says what he wants to say, and you will say you will respond
I'm not,
in kind.
my statement speaks for itself. What did I say?
There was a declaration of war.
What was,
Paraphrasing.
what, I don't want you to paraphrase me. I want you to tell me, what is it that I said?
You said let us declare war
On,
on a number of things.
Like what?
On civil servants, for one.
I never said I declare war. I never said I'm going to declare war on civil servants.
But
So
those-
if you're not going to, if you can't even quote the statement, so you came here fishing. You came here fishing for a story. So if you want to ask me a question, I'm absolutely prepared to ask a question. So what is it specifically that I say in my statement that you have taken offense to?
I have taken offense to nothing.
So
I've taken offense.
so then you have the answer to your question.
Did you hear the statement yourself?
I heard the statement.
And you said that he declared war on
I-
public servants?
I'm asking. in
No, you said
relation-
he declared war on public servants.
Yes, among declaring war on other things.
I never declared war on the civil servants.
But
And you said you
the
heard the statement?
question,
Okay, if
The
you wait a
question-
moment before you go on, let me quote to you what he said.
go
Okay?
ahead,
He said, we have to declare war tonight on those who are taking us about the show,
definitely,
on the people who seek to breach our constitution.
certainly.
You agree we should declare war on these things?
But the
No,
question.
hold on, I'm speaking to you.
Of course, go on.
And then he said, wait a minute, I am putting the public servants on notice that they are here to protect and serve the public, not ministers. That is
Correct.
a statement
But
in reference to public
The
servants. In what way has that?
question only has context if I say what the minister said. And I'm saying
No,
the
yeah, we
minister.
don't know
So
what he said.
so let me ask you the question. The current prime minister declared himself a 6-star general.
Yes.
Was he talking about war?
What
do
did say the
generals do?
word war?
What do
Well,
generals do?
what do
Not
generals
like war?
do?
He didn't say the word
What
war.
do generals do?
But he's a
Well,
general. He's a general of an
he's
army.
comrade from time to time,
Correct.
so I
Okay.
suppose
But they're not
calling
advocating
himself-
war.
So you see, look, the issue that whenever you use the
What
word,
do you use a bazooka to do?
yeah.
to shoot things down.
Okay.
I'm not defending anyone. I
So that's what I'm
came to
asking.
ask you
So I'm
for your
asking.
response in
So
relation
it-
to a question.
it's not-
in relation to a call rather for a retraction and an apology. That was his call yesterday.
I would
And
very,
it
I would
was
very,
quite
I'd
explicit.
very much like the government to
so-
answer the question as to the
I'm
charges of corruption. Why would you allow $440 million US to go into the hands of a third-party company without a bidding process?
again,
Why would you
just
give a
your
why would you give a contract to a company that was going to build a building for the government at 3 times the cost of construction, that was going to be 4 times the rent of the Daher Mall? Why would you allow $1 billion, alleged $1 billion in CIP program, which we cannot account for? Why would you allow $80 million
So
to
let
go
me
into the
ask
NLA?
Another question, right? On the
We're
same,
running
on
out
the
of
same-
time. You're
Yeah,
late.
just one.
It's your fault.
just
You're not
one-
here.
just
We are
one
out of
last
time.
question
So I want to thank
on
you
this
for your
Just
time.
one.
I want to thank
It's
you.
harmless.
But
It's
we're
a
out of time.
harmless
We
question.
have to end. Guys, I want
It's
to thank
about
you very, very
semantics
much
and words.
for this press
Yeah.
conference.
Someone
I want to thank
in
you
your
very, very
party
much.
Thank you.
says that
Thank
you
you.
didn't
You're
know.
late. You're late. We started at 10 and you're late.
Thank
So I
you.
want to thank you very, very much, everybody, for coming. This press conference is now over. I want to thank the leader of the opposition for his submissions. I want to thank the public relations officer of the United Workers' Party. We've been here for almost 2 hours, and we've made ourselves available to you, the members of the press, for any level of scrutiny. So thank you, and thanks to members of Facebook who have listened here today, and thank you for joining us live. Thank you. Thanks, y'all.